People might have preconceived notions that since our story takes place mostly in the land of the dead, that's going to be a spooky place. Nothing could be further from the truth. We've tried to create a world that embodies everything about Dia de los Muertos that has transfixed people all over the world. It's a land filled with music, full of color, full of dance, and it's celebratory. We all want to know the answer to that ultimate mystery. Is there anything after death? Is there a heaven? Is there a world we go to?
One of the first things we did when we decided to make a film set against this backdrop is to just read.
We read a lot about Mexican folklore. We read a lot about a belief system of what that could be, what that could look like.
Every last thing that we design, every building, every prop needs to be influenced in some way by something that really exists in the world or from the imagination, which is inspired by things maybe that we saw on one of these research trips.
There were so many things that I saw in Mexico that were unique to me. In cities like Guanajuato, the houses are stepped up on the hillside.
There's this really cool tunnel network underneath the city. The way that the tunnels crisscross was completely inspiring.
One of the things that really surprised me when I was on this trip was seeing a cemetery for the first time that wasn't sad. And it was more of a celebration. That, to me, is what was so beautiful to see.
Coming back from a research trip can be very intimidating because we see so much cool stuff. You feel this pressure to try to, ooh, how do we put all this into the movie?
It could be city stuff if there's enough.
The big design challenge was the Land of the Dead, because what does it look like? Whenever you're making up a world, it takes a lot of thought and planning and effort and trial and error to figure it out.
Lee kept talking about images of towers.
There were a lot of concept paintings done before we kind of settled on a look that we were happy with.
First job was to try to model the initial paintings in 3D. That resulted in models that were pretty raw and rough. And so we sent images back to the design department, and we went back and forth quite a bit to try to find the model that sort of fit the culture of the film.
And that, combined with the sort of model that Dave Strick made, led to a painting by Ernesto. He took a model that we built and painted on top of it.
I was just trying to find ways that I could create a world built on generations. A lot of that I was trying to pull from personal experience visiting my grandparents in Mexico. What those neighborhoods feel like, how close a lot of those buildings are actually kind of built on top of each other. A lot of that abstract thinking I tried to instill into the actual paintings of what maybe these towers would look like.
At the very base are pyramids. And then you get this pre-colonial architecture that leads to this colonial era to sort of 50s, and then on until the scaffolding and cranes on the top where they're building brand new architecture.
That work helped to inform the geography and give us a sense of place, that the whole place actually existed.
Also, when we built the towers, we tried to keep in mind that scenes would take place in them, so we'd create alleyways and stairways and areas that you could potentially film scenes in. There's a scene that takes place in a plaza. There are scenes that take place in a giant hacienda. There's a scene that takes place along the docks by the water towards the base of one of the towers.
We're always trying to put as much time as we can into the sets and bring out the details, and just like everybody just lovingly crafts these. But it's never just to be beautiful on their own. It's always in service of the story.
In all stories, you're trying to understand what are the rules of the world and how do things tick.
The rules of the Land of the Dead are there are no living things, so there's no trees, no grass.
Trees are sort of metal trees with these bulbs on the end.
People can't really get injured like they were when they were living. Because of that, things don't have to be built to code.
So you get one scene where Hector jumps off the end of a thing, and you're kind of like, ah, and he falls apart, and he goes back together again just fine.
Keep up, chamaco, come on!
But the most important rule is that you have to be remembered.
We designed an entire set around that rule. It's at the bottom of the towers, it's rickety, it's where the people who are almost forgotten live.
You only get to live in that land of the dead for as long as there are people back in the land of the living who remember you.
We knew that we needed to create stakes for this idea of being remembered, and that came in the form of the final death with a character named Chicharrón.
When Buenas noches, Chicharrón.
I don't want to see your stupid face, Hector.
With this character of Chicharrón, we needed someone who could handle the weight. And Edward James Olmos, we knew he would be perfect for this role.
I'm fading, Hector. I can feel it. I couldn't even play that thing if I wanted to.
That scene lays the important emotional groundwork for understanding visually and emotionally what the final death means.
Where did he go?
No one knows.
And it's heartbreaking, and I apologize to people who fell in love with Chicharrón. But for these characters, being remembered, it's everything. There's something nice about the idea that in the land of the dead, family sticks together.
The scope of the project was so huge that it really couldn't have come from one individual. It had to come from a real collaborative effort.
We care about every last thing, every set, every prop, every character. If we've done our job well, people forget they're watching a movie. They get completely wrapped up in the story and the humor and the emotion. It's real for them.
What I love about the language of music is that we all feel it like deep down in our bones. No matter where you come from, like you hear a really good rhythm or you hear a really beautiful melody and it starts to like pull at your heart and shake your hips. It's such a human way to be able to relate to someone you've never met before, because I think deep down it's in all of our DNA.
It's just beautiful to see how many creative people work on this. It's a collective effort.
The performances are all acoustic, they're beautiful, they're heartfelt, and it's a live experience.
So it's, and you fall into it. Yeah.
Coco is about a 12-year-old boy named Miguel who has a passion to play music. So the music is a huge part of the story that we're telling.
The score's job is to track the character's emotions and guide the audience through this emotional journey. So if you were to close your eyes, you could listen to the dialogue, hear the music, and know where you're supposed to go. A movie about a musician, it's a little tricky, because you have a lot of music in a film like this. So the balance was, when do we use musicians that you see on screen to tell the story? When do we use the orchestra to tell the story? When do we use the songs to tell the story? And there were times when we thought, why don't we just have the music of the environment here?
I want to play in the plaza, like De La Cruz.
One of the creative opportunities we had was to ground the music in this place.
This movie is set in Mexico with a backdrop of Dia de los Muertos.
It's very, very important for me because this film is about a specific culture, that it feels like it was made with care, with respect, and with a sense of what it means to be Mexican.
It is a music landscape that is amazing. To try to define the heart of Mexican folk music is very tough. It must be as tough as saying why tacos taste so good in Mexico.
It's a specific sound because it's related to the cultures of the people that are living there.
Linda Oaxaca de mi alma, no quiero morirme sin volverte a ver.
Most of the musicians get some techniques through an oral tradition that has been for hundreds of years in Mexico. And the instruments are made in Mexico. And they have a certain sound. So you have to know what to play, how to play it, and which instrument to use. Lee wants to create this connection between real Mexican musicians and what it was going to be on the film.
I wanted there to be a rich tapestry of different genres of Mexican source music in the world.
About midway through production, we went down to Mexico City, and Camila and Jermaine helped arrange this marathon recording session.
We spent 4 days just going nonstop. Over 50 musicians came. The studio had 6 stories. The elevator was out, and there were these tubas coming up and down, and percussion, and all kinds of instruments coming and going. It was a bit chaotic, but it was so perfect.
Well, it was like the We Are the World of Mexican music.
We had a banda group from Oaxaca.
They have, a huge tuba, which is actually a sousaphone, and they use these instruments that are called charchetas, the umpa, they're the pas. When you're in the room and they're playing, you feel it.
We also have some marimba.
The Nandayapa family has the tradition of making marimbas, playing them. Then there's also the trio style of 3 musicians singing, and they do harmonies.
And of course, mariachi.
Who use, trumpet and violin, but they're played a certain way.
We had a Son Jarocho group.
Mono Blanco from Veracruz. Probably the most important combo of Son Jarocho. Very important to the community in Mexico.
And then there's a lot of interesting percussion. We had the quijada, which is the jawbone.
It's the jawbone of a cow or a donkey. It's a donkey. It's quijada de burro, of course. Yeah.
A lot of the music that we produced is also just to be source music that could waft through the film. And I know when people who know what that music is hear it, it'll feel like home.
Hey, these guys! Hey, Leo, ¿qué onda? These people are all your family?
No way. We're all the ones with no photos or ofrendas, no family to go home to.
Because this is a film about music and family, so much of the storytelling revolves around what music does to help you connect to someone else.
What about Poco Loco?
Epa! Now that's a song.
There is a genre of songs in Mexico that, even though they're super happy songs, they talk about things that really annoy you. And I think Poco Loco is that. Like, I like you, you're kind of annoying, but in a good way.
It's just a poco crazy, let's my cabeza shake.
When you're in a relationship with somebody, there's a push and pull, and you love them, but sometimes they make you crazy. And how do you deal with that?
We came up with the song first by Adrian writing the lyrics and then sending them to me. I sat at the piano and wrote and arranged the song.
Jermaine has such a lexicon of instruments and rhythm ideas, and so when she came back, we would talk about what style of music feels like it would be in the right realm. And me and Jermaine are very simpatico when it comes to this style called Son Jarocho. A beautiful string-based ensemble. It's just kind of festive and upbeat and exciting.
And then I thought, well, let's open up the song and have a tarima. It's a box with holes in it, so when you dance, it resonates.
And so that sparks the idea of, if they're performing on stage, Hector should be dancing the zapateado.
Hector, because of the way that he's constructed, is really an instrument in and of himself.
He's all bones, so the bone sounds give that percussive element to it.
What you see in that dance is a combination of the original recording and the Foley people putting their bone component into it.
I wanted there to be a texture of reality to everybody, and that always came out of character.
What color is
is the sky. Ay, mi amor. Ay, mi amor.
And thank the heavens that Anthony Gonzalez wandered into our lives one day.
Well, one of the surprises for us was that he's actually an amazing singer and had been singing mariachi music and Mexican music his whole life.
Anthony Gonzalez just really like pushes the voice.
The way you keep me guessing, I'm nodding and I'm yes.
But he sings like a possessed soul.
That I'm only un poco loco.
Yeah.
Seeing how he connects to his music and his art, it's in every fiber of his being.
We're all artists, and Miguel is an artist, so we all relate instantly. But we also need to figure out, how do we translate on screen that feeling we feel about the thing that we're in love with?
One of maybe my favorite scene in the whole movie is Miguel in his cubby playing guitar. You can see Miguel looking longingly into these movie clips, and then you can kind of see him go internal and feel the music. You know, we had at one point 75 different people animating on this film. Most of them don't know how to play guitar. So how do you get someone who doesn't know how to play the guitar to be able to animate someone playing guitar?
When the musicians were recording, I have seen the crew shooting different angles just to capture the way the fingers are pressing the strings and the hand position and the movement.
And then our editorial department, for every scene in the film where there's guitar playing, took that reference and put it into our shots on precise frame marks. And then we had to develop a guitar rig to be able to vibrate the string only up until the point of the finger. And then when you move the finger, it has to vibrate to a different point.
It looks very natural in the film, but it's actually a character playing what a musician did. That's mind-blowing.
So what's the plan? What are you gonna play?
Definitely remember me.
Remember me.
Though I have to say goodbye, remember me.
The song Remember Me, it's originally sung by Ernesto de la Cruz.
Remember me.
You hear it in various forms throughout the film. The first one, of course, is the orchestral mariachi extravaganza style. And then you'll hear it later in the film as a lullaby.
I wrote her a song once. We used to sing it every night.
I am not a professional singer, no, but I like singing. I enjoy it a lot. And they were really helpful to guide me through, especially Remember Me. It's a very, very, very complicated song.
Yeah, that's gonna be great.
To get the notes right, to get the feeling, to get the, the journey where the song takes you.
Just in terms of that line, the secret song.
And also to not forget about
The secret song is this song.
like the magic that you can bring into a song, because one can sing it perfectly, but then it's like whatever. It is about the feeling that you put into it.
Remember me, though I have to say goodbye. Remember me.
What works for me in the song is the idea of melancholy.
Or even if I'm far away.
That mixture of joy and sadness. That to me is most representative of life. It is both happy and sad.
Coco it's a beautiful painting, like full of colors and magic and energy. The music collage that happens across the movie is that, but sonically. It's something real, it's something alive, it's very energetic, and it's very Mexican.
I'm super proud of this film, and I think the legacy of the work that everyone's done in terms of music will be seen by what people walk away from this film with. And I think they're gonna walk away from this film with this desire to learn an instrument and sing as a family and use music to connect to someone else.
On this film, we really designed a lot of different costumes. Designing costumes for two worlds is a lot of work.
A lot of times the clothes can tell you something about the personality of the characters. Our number one priority is to give you a sense of the emotional state of our characters.
Costumes matter in so many ways. I mean, I think we would really giggle if we all went to a movie where characters didn't have costumes.
The costumes, both in the Land of the Dead and the Land of the Living, are fabulous because they're so authentic.
From a cultural perspective, we didn't want to just make up items of clothing for people to be wearing. We wanted it to be rooted in Mexican culture.
We did a lot of extensive research from the south to the north of Mexico. Everywhere you go, people look so different and dress differently. People wear manufactured clothing and traditional clothing and swimsuits and whatever they want.
The costumes in Coco really range from late 1800s through the present day.
For the Land of the Dead, we wanted to do a mix of different costumes and designs that people who are now alive would remember. It's like fashion through the ages.
I can still remember my grandmother, who was born in 1900, and my mother can remember her grandmother, who was born in 1880, and so that period is well represented in the World of the Dead. The Victorian look of the Land of the Dead was inspired by the engravings of Jose Guadalupe Posada. His image of the Katrina character, the skeleton with the big Victorian hat, is kind of iconic of Dia de Muertos.
We're trying to be really smart about how we use it, but get the most variety.
We needed to create a huge variety of characters that were different both in size and shape. Because they're skeletons, if you kind of zoom really far out, they kind of look the same. So in a way, the costumes had to become the characters. So much of what is outwardly portrayed comes out of their outfits. Like, you know what region they're from, or you know what time period they're from.
There was a lot of thought that went into making these costumes be as true to the history as possible.
Like a look also that's contemporary, but it would still look sort of indigenous, like longer skirts.
Santa Cecilia is mostly contemporary clothing.
Miguel has a big family in Santa Cecilia, and we tried to communicate their personalities through their clothing. Miguel's cousin Abel is a big soccer fan. He's like a would-be athlete. His mother is wearing a traditional Oaxacan embroidered blouse. Her costume is a little more traditional than her sister's.
She's a little bit more like cool and like punk. She's like wearing the jeans and very bright colors. I would wear that, I thought it was cool.
Mama Coco, she definitely is more in a much more traditional outfit. She has like her little woven blanket on her.
Should we incorporate her shawl like in the boards?
I think so.
Mama Coco is basically wearing a freshly starched nightgown, also with a Oaxacan embroidery on the bodice. We wanted her to look like somebody's great-grandma that is honored but is not very active.
I used to run like this, but now I run like this. It's just way faster.
Danny, is this your son? He's super cute. Yeah, how old is he, 8?
He just turned 9. But it turns out he was pretty close to the right proportions. He's younger and got the bigger head still.
You guys can start thinking about his jeans since he's wearing them through the movie. Make them a bit more worn. Maybe there's a hole in the knee.
And does he cuff the bottom of the pants, or do you think he just?
I don't know. I mean, we've drawn him cuffed a lot just because. Dean kind of does a cuffing a lot.
It'd be cool.
Miguel's costume is really complicated. It is a hoodie and jeans and a tank top. But that hoodie has so much variation to it. It has a real zipper, it has real pockets. The hood can go up and down. The hood can even squeeze around his face.
We have Miguel, and he's in an environment that's foreign to him, and he's uncomfortable. He might bashfully put his hands in the pockets of his hoodie and kind of try to feel small and invisible. Cloth has a big impact on our acting.
In animation, when a character dances, the clothing has to dance too. Whatever the shapes and the flows of the poses of the dance are, the cloth has to follow it. We had dancers over to basically get a feel of what the traditional dance was, and they taught us some steps.
What Rudy and I are going to do are going to come up with a menu of, Jalisco and polka and some chiapas, I think they said, in Nayarit steps.
The dances in Mexico are as numerous as the regions in Mexico.
In Oaxaca, for example, there are 7 regions and every town has a different costume.
The dancers that are in the De La Cruz Spectacular, they're all wearing what's called Jalisco-style dresses.
Oh, this is heavy. This skirt and the Jalisco skirts are 2 full circles, so that they're cut. There's a lot of fabric there, but the actual top body of it has maybe 3.5 yards of fabric. And then when you add all of the ribbons, like Ruth's skirt has, this skirt is about 20 pounds.
Like this?
Yeah, so.
Never mind the gym, man. This thing. I need to build my biceps on this one.
When we were twirling the skirts in the computer, you had to be true to the dance. And we worked back and forth with the animators in order to recreate the exact kind of motion you see in the reference.
Christine, there's also something really nice. If you notice, it's one clean shape, but then when you look at the actual skeleton, I feel like if we draped cloth on that, it would go in the pelvic bone and then around the femur.
Regular living humans dancing are held to certain rules, but skeletons aren't because they don't have any skin or muscle or tissue. Our skeletal structure is only 20% of our body weight. If the movement of the skeleton is light and the cloth is 20 pounds, how's that gonna look? We realized that in the dead world, maybe the rules were that the cloth wasn't so heavy.
Digital cloth is made of a mesh of triangles and points.
We start with panels of cloth and we stitch them together in order to make a costume on the character.
Then we simulate the clothing on the animation. So the problem with putting clothing on skeletons is that the skeleton is made up of little tiny bones.
And it was very easy for the cloth to get caught in between individual bones.
That's the worst case scenario for digital clothing because all of the clothing dives into the crevices of the bones, kind of like a skeleton wedgie.
To fix this problem, we implemented a technique known as continuous collision detection, which allows you to robustly detect all of the collisions as a character moves, even if it's moving really fast. No more wedgies.
Typically in animation, interacting with cloth is very complicated. We interacted with cloth all over this film. Hector grabbing his suspenders, De La Cruz adjusting his tie, or Imelda picking up her dress as she's walking. Throughout the film, we just started touching everything.
The fact that we can costume hundreds of characters now in lushly layered Victorian costumes is wonderful to me.
Things that I didn't even work on, whenever I saw them on screen, I'd be like, oh my God, they nailed that. And like, it just made me so happy to see how hard everyone here was trying to represent our culture with such respect and accuracy. I think Coco is like a beautiful love letter to Mexico. So it was so exciting to work on it.
Music is like the only thing worth living for, or being dead for in your case.
Hey, Poco Loco! Hey, kid, man, you were on fire tonight!
Thanks! Hey, musician to musician, I need a favor.
Good, awesome, good. But before you go, we want to give you an early Christmas present. If that's okay.
Yeah, yes, it's totally okay. Gosh! Oh, gosh. Are we gonna open it, like, right now?
Yeah, you can open it right now.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, what is it? Oh my god! Oh my god!
You've done such an awesome job, and everybody loves you.
Thank you so much. I don't have words to say. Thank you for everything that you do for my son.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you for your love.
Come on out and see. These are all the people that are going to be making the movie with Anthony in it. Here, let me just take two of them.
This is very important for us. We need to have this for the rest of life. Our life.
Oh my God.
Remember, Anthony.
Dante is a street dog that Miguel has named to the consternation of his abuela.
Never name a street dog. They'll follow you forever.
By most people's standards, he's an ugly dog. He's missing some teeth. He's got a broken tail. He's got a notch missing out of one of his ears. But Miguel loves him. And Dante loves Miguel back.
Shake. Fist bump.
He's got this funny tongue that like hangs and flips around his snout. He's just an adorable mess.
Lee loves dogs.
Darla loves dogs.
Lee and Darla, they're dog crazy.
So when we were coming up with the idea for Coco, pretty early on we came up with the idea of Miguel having a dog.
We went down to Mexico and we got to meet some dogs and saw them in person.
Everywhere we went, there were dogs. There were dogs on the roof. There were dogs in the street.
We were visiting a family in Oaxaca. As we were sitting and having this meal, the family had a big basset hound that kept sneaking into the room and trying to eat food off of the ofrenda. He kept trying to go for this muffin. And the family would scream and kind of haul him back out of the room. And then we'd all be talking again, and then in the middle of that, there would be the dog slinking into the back of the room and trying to get that muffin on the ofrenda. We kind of turned to each other and we said, that is in the movie.
Dante! Dante is based on the national dog of Mexico.
He's a type of dog named Cholo Squinkle that was around since the times of the Aztecs and Olmecs and Incans. Since they don't have any hair, they emit a lot of heat that some people in Mexico actually use therapeutically. They just hug the dogs and they're super warm and it makes them feel good.
In ancient Aztec myth, when somebody died, they had to go on a journey towards kind of a land of the dead called Mictlan. And it was impossible for somebody to navigate on their own. They needed to have a Xolo dog with them.
Here was this perfectly Mexican dog that was so connected to both sides, the living and the dead.
Okay, rolling. Here we go with the Xolos again.
We were so excited by how unique they were.
They're so pretty. You know, they have that kind of charcoal gray. They just look like a volcano.
If you saw them from afar, you might go, oh, I'm scared of that dog. But they were really sweet. And you pet them and it's like sort of petting sandpaper skin or something.
I'm like, oh, you're so cute, little buddy. Come on, let's hang out. And I reached down to pet his head and I got all the warts all over my hand. I'm like, okay, I think I'm done.
Once you see one, you never forget them.
We brought the Xolo dogs in for the animators to study and draw. Each dog that we brought in had a very unique personality.
Isn't that great?
One of the things that's funny about Dante, which came from our research, is that a lot of Xolo dogs genetically lose their teeth. And when a dog loses its teeth, they don't have anything to hold their tongue in. And the tongue we've embraced kind of as a character of its own.
Imagine he just stopped here and his tongue stayed on this side. So it flips around and can just be kind of dangling out. And I would play with pulling it longer.
Okay. And the animators are really just having a blast doing all kinds of really funny, unexpected things with Dante and his tongue. Dante starts off in the film as being a totally goofy but lovable dog companion for Miguel. You know, maybe Dante's head kind of pokes up first and then he messily scrambles out of the boxes. And then Dante, of course, ends up going on this incredible journey with Miguel into the land of the dead. Pretty early on, he's told that Dante is actually a spirit guide.
Oh, the mighty Xolo dog, guider of wandering spirits.
I don't think he's a spirit guide. He might actually just be a dog.
No. Do not be fooled. The alebrijes of this world can take many forms. They are as mysterious as they are powerful. Or maybe he's just a dog.
Miguel realizes, wow, maybe Dante's actually useful to me. He was trying to bring he and Hector together. And anytime Hector and Miguel are together, Dante's perfectly happy and acts like he doesn't have a job to do. But the moment Miguel and Hector are separated, Dante gets very agitated and does things that could be construed as being a pain.
Dante, stop it!
The moment that Miguel realizes that Dante has fulfilled his duty as a true spirit guide, we then get to see Dante go through this amazing transformation. When Dante transforms into an alebrije creature, he then pops open a pair of wings, and they're kind of pathetic. You know, rather than using his wings to fly initially, we have him actually trying to run in the air, and he doesn't understand why he can't get himself going. I corrected the animators to treat him like a wasp with their legs hanging. We tried to make him still fun and goofy, even though he's in this kind of heightened, glorious alebrije state.
I think you can tell by the way we've put Dante into the movie. Dante's got a lot of love in this studio.